Washington's Cascade Range goes dead quiet in winter. No tourists, no logging trucks, no cell signal, just snow, cold, and the sound of your own breath. Corporal Mara Sullivan had been rerouted through a forgotten trail outside Okanagan County. A last-minute supply run to North Point Barracks. She wasn't supposed to be out there. Just a medical drop. But 2 clicks past the last comms tower, the road vanished under ice. So she went on foot. Alone. She liked the cold. Kept her sharp. But this cold wasn't normal. Pressed in from all sides, heavy, listening. She checked her GPS again. Nothing. Just trees. A lot of trees. Then she heard the voices. Behind her. Hey, sweetheart. Need a hand with that bag? She turned slowly. 9 men stood along the trail. No unit patches. No command tags. Just beards, bad smiles, and loaded rifles. Her sidearm was still holstered. She didn't have time to draw it. They moved faster than she expected. Too smooth. Too confident. Like they'd done this before. But none of them looked past her. None of them noticed the figures in the trees. Watching. Not breathing. Wolves. Dozens of them. Not moving. Not snarling. Not yet. And among them, just barely visible behind a drift of snow, stood one smaller wolf with a faded scar on its rear flank. A scar stitched clean and tight by human hands. By her hands. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story for today. If you are ready to enjoy this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and places. Also, don't forget to check out more of our interesting videos on the channel. Now back to the story. The wolves didn't move. Not an inch. Dozens of yellow eyes locked onto the 9 men from the shadows, silent as ghosts. Mara stood frozen in the snow, heart hammering. She didn't dare speak. Didn't blink. She just looked at them. And one of them looked back. A smaller one. Gray fur dusted with white. A fresh scar curved along its rear flank like a stitched thread. Her stitch. The same one she'd tied with trembling fingers weeks ago, under a dying moon. It remembered. She remembered. Then the snow shifted. A gust of wind. The trees creaked. The wolves were gone. Gone like smoke. The 9 men didn't notice. Didn't see anything at all. They kept smirking. Kept closing in. And the forest swallowed the truth whole. 3 weeks earlier. The forest wasn't quiet that night. It was dead. Snow floated in the air, lazy and slow, like the sky had forgotten how to fall properly. The trail ahead twisted between tall pines that looked like black knives stabbed into the earth. Their branches groaned in the wind, heavy with frost. Corporal Mara Sullivan adjusted her grip on the rifle slung across her chest and kept walking. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Her boots sank into a crust of snow with every step. Just deep enough to slow her down, not deep enough to cover tracks. Good for moving, bad for hiding. 6 soldiers moved ahead of her in a loose line. Nobody spoke. Not anymore. The woods did something to people. Stripped them down. Turned loudmouths into ghosts and rookies into cowards. Nobody cracked jokes out here. Nobody talked about home. They just watched the trees and prayed they wouldn't have to kill anything tonight. Mara didn't pray. She'd learned a long time ago not to waste time on wishes. Keep it tight, Sergeant Hall called from the front, voice sharp and flat. We're not sightseeing. The line bunched up, weapons tightening to shoulders. Mara said nothing. She was always in the back. Not because it was safer, but because nobody trusted a medic to pull lead when things went sideways. Especially not a woman. Especially not her. She didn't mind. She liked the quiet. It let her think. Let her see. And right now she saw something. It was small. Off to the left. A shadow. Limping. She stopped walking. The soldier behind her bumped into her shoulder with a grunt. What the hell, Sully? She raised her hand to hush him. There. Just past the treeline. Movement. A faint streak of pale fur against the dark. Mara squinted, stepping half a pace forward. The others didn't notice. They kept moving. But she saw it. A small creature. Lopsided. Dragging one leg. Breathing heavy. Then it vanished behind a ridge. Gone. Her eyes narrowed. It wasn't big enough to be a deer, too heavy to be a rabbit. And that limp? It wasn't right. It looked hurt. Mara turned her head toward the line. "Sergeant," she called. Hall didn't stop. "Something's moving out there. About 30 feet out, northwest." Hall let out a sharp breath and finally turned. "If it didn't shoot at you, it's not our problem." "It's limping." "I said it's not our problem." Mara hesitated. He stared at her like she was dirt under his boot. And just like that, the line moved on. She could still hear it. The soft shuffle in the snow, like something dragging itself through pain. She let her rifle hang loose against her chest and walked. But her mind stayed behind. The checkpoint came 20 minutes later. Just a rusted frame of old fencing and a half-collapsed watchtower. Used to be military. Now it was just another skeleton in the woods. The squad spread out. Cleared corners. Standard sweep. Nobody found anything. Hall signaled for a quick break. 5 minutes, he muttered, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. "Then we move." Some of the guys sat on overturned crates, rubbing their feet, adjusting straps. One pissed against a tree. Mara moved toward a shallow dip in the trail. She crouched low, pretending to check the sensor logs on her wrist unit. In reality, she was listening for that sound again. The one she couldn't forget. A dragging limp. Soft breaths. Pain trying not to be heard. Then she heard it again. To her left. Farther out now, maybe 40 feet. She stood up slowly, scanning the trees. No one noticed her break from the group. They never did. The snow thickened. The trees closed in. And the trail vanished behind her. Mara moved like a ghost. Careful. Slow. Each step sinking with weight. There. Blood. Just a small smear across a rock. She followed it. Another few steps. A shallow groove in the snow, like something had crawled through it. Then she saw it. Under a low branch, curled tight and shaking, was a wolf cub. It was barely breathing. Its back leg was wrapped in barbed wire, the metal twisted deep into the flesh, cutting all the way to bone. Blood had frozen around the wound, turning the fur black. The cub growled, weak and broken. Mara's breath caught in her throat. She glanced behind her. Nothing but trees. Then she dropped to her knees. "Easy," she whispered. The cub snarled, trying to move, but its leg gave out. It flopped onto its side and whimpered. Mara pulled off her gloves. Her fingers burned in the cold. She reached into her pack and pulled out her trauma kit. She didn't have time. Didn't have orders. Didn't care. She took out a blade and carefully clipped the barbed wire. Each twist sent a fresh shudder through the cub's body. It yelped once, and the sound pierced straight through her ribs. When the wire came free, the cub tried to crawl. She stopped it with one hand. She cleaned the wound quickly, poured antiseptic, then took a strip of her own undershirt and wrapped it tight around the leg. "You're gonna live," she murmured. The cub looked up at her, then bit her hand. Hard. Blood ran down her wrist. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. "Good." Behind her, a branch snapped. She turned fast, blade in hand. Private Leaks stood there, arms folded, chewing a protein bar. "Well, look at that. Our field angels playing zookeeper." Mara didn't move. "You know I could report this." She stood slowly. He grinned. "Hell, I should report this. You know what command does to people who go soft out here." Mara took a step forward. "You didn't see anything," she said. He laughed. "Or what?" She held his gaze. No smile. No blink. And just for a second, something passed between them. Not threat. Not fear. Something colder. He took a step back. "Whatever," he muttered, turning. "It's your funeral." She watched him go, then turned back to the cub. It was barely holding on. Mara scooped it into her arms and carried it deeper into the trees, until she found a small hollow under a thick pine. Dry leaves. Some shelter from the wind. She set it down gently. The cub whined once, then curled into itself. Mara brushed a hand across its fur. "If you make it, stay away from people," she whispered. "We don't deserve you." She left the cub tucked in the hollow and turned back toward the squad. And just before she reached them, she looked over her shoulder. For just a moment, she thought she saw something in the trees. Eyes, too many to count. Watching, waiting. And in the cold, as she rejoined the patrol, the bandage from the cub's leg, soaked in blood and tied with her own cloth, pressed warm against her chest. She didn't tell anyone. Not about the cub. Not about leaks. Not about the eyes in the dark. But the forest remembered. And so did the wolves. The bandage pressed warm against Mara's chest as she slipped back into line. Nobody asked where she had gone. Nobody cared. The patrol moved on, boots cutting clean lines through the snow. Pine needles snapped underfoot. Breath fogged the air in short, sharp bursts. The forest closed behind them like a mouth. Mara kept her head down. Her hand throbbed where the cub had bitten her. Blood had dried along her knuckles, stiff and dark. She flexed her fingers once, then stopped. Pain meant life. Pain meant the cub had fought back. Good. The patrol pushed deeper into the trees. The moon slid behind clouds, turning the world into shadow and steel. Every sound felt louder now. Every crack of ice. Every creak of wood. Mara felt watched. Not by men. By something older. Sergeant Hall raised a fist. The line halted. Ahead, the land dipped into a shallow basin where a creek cut through rock and ice. The water was mostly frozen, but a thin black ribbon still moved beneath the surface, whispering as it slid past stones. Hall glanced at his watch. 5 minutes, he said. Drink. Adjust. Stay sharp. The squad loosened, but only slightly. No one relaxed fully out here. Not after the last 3 weeks. 3 ambushes. 2 dead. 1 man dragged screaming into the trees and never found. Mara knelt near the edge of the creek and pretended to check the sensor cable running along the bank. Her hands moved out of habit. Her eyes did not. She listened. The wind shifted. That sound again. Soft. Rough. A faint scrape against ice. Her heart kicked. She angled her body so the others could not see her face. Her gaze slid left, then farther down the creek. There. A dark smear against the snow. Blood. Fresh. Her jaw tightened. She keyed her radio and spoke softly. Checking the line downstream. Might be interference. Hall did not look at her. 2 minutes. That was all the permission she needed. Mara stood and moved. Slow at first. Casual. Like she belonged exactly where she was going. Then the trees swallowed her. The cold bit harder away from the group. The air smelled different here. Wet. Sharp. Like iron. She followed the blood. It was not much. Just drops. A thin trail that dipped and rose, vanished under snow, then appeared again on bark and stone. Her boots sank deeper now. The ground sloped downward, pulling her toward the creek. She crouched low and listened. A growl rolled out of the brush. Weak, broken, but full of anger. Mara froze. There you are, she whispered. She pushed aside a curtain of branches and saw it. The wolf cub lay tangled in old barbed wire, half buried in snow and leaves. The metal had wrapped tight around its rear leg, twisted cruel and deep. Every breath made its body shake. Its teeth flashed when it saw her. Its eyes were bright with fear and fire. Mara sank to her knees. It's okay, she said softly. I'm not here to hurt you. The cub snapped at the air, then tried to pull back. The wire bit deeper. It yelped, high and sharp, then collapsed. Mara swallowed. She checked the trees behind her. Nothing. Still, she knew better. She worked fast. Gloves off. Trauma kit open. Knife out. Her fingers burned as they touched metal colder than bone. She cut the wire carefully, piece by piece. Each snip made the cub jerk and snarl. I know, she murmured. I know. The last coil came free. Blood flowed immediately, dark and thick. The wound was bad. Torn muscle. Deep. Untreated, it would kill the cub by morning. Mara did not hesitate. She poured antiseptic over the wound. The cub screamed and lunged. His teeth sank into her hand. Pain exploded. She gasped, but she did not pull away. She held steady. Good. she whispered through clenched teeth. Fight me. Stay alive. The cub released her and panted, sides heaving. Mara tore a long strip from her undershirt and pressed it tight around the leg. She wrapped it carefully, firm but gentle. She tied it off with a knot she had learned under fire, hands steady despite the blood. There. The bleeding slowed. The cub slumped, exhausted. Mara let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. She brushed snow away from its face. You're tough, she said. You remind me of someone. A sound drifted through the trees. Footsteps. Mara turned. Private Leaks stood near the edge of the brush, rifle slung loose, eyes wide with surprise. Well, I'll be damned, he said quietly. You really are crazy. Mara rose slowly. You didn't see this. Leaks snorted. You kidding? This is gold. He took a step closer. You know what they do to people who break protocol out here, he said. Helping wildlife. Playing hero. Command would eat you alive. Mara stepped between him and the cub. Her voice dropped. Walk away. He laughed, but it was thin. You think you scare me? She met his eyes. Something passed between them. He stopped smiling. Get back to the line, she said. Leaks hesitated. Then he spat into the snow and turned away. Your funeral, he muttered. Mara waited until his footsteps faded. Then she lifted the cub carefully. It weighed almost nothing. She carried it deeper into the trees, away from the trail, until she found a hollow beneath thick roots. Dry, hidden, safe. She laid the cub down and tucked leaves around it. It looked up at her. Their eyes locked. You stay here, she whispered. Stay quiet. Heal. The cub huffed softly, then curled in on itself. Mara stood. Her hand throbbed. Blood seeped through her glove. She looked around. The forest was still. Too still. Then she felt it. Eyes. Not one pair. Many. Watching from the dark. She did not turn. She did not run. She simply nodded once, slow and respectful. Then she went back. The patrol was already moving when she rejoined them. No one spoke. The creek disappeared behind them. But something had changed. The forest felt closer now, like it was leaning in. And far behind them, in a hollow under twisted roots, a wounded cub breathed through the pain. Alive, because one medic had broken formation, and the woods were keeping score. The forest followed her back. Not with footsteps, not with sound, but with a pressure, a knowing, like it had seen everything, and now it was waiting to see what she would do next. Corporal Mara Sullivan walked in silence, eyes forward, boots crunching ice just behind the rest of the squad. Her hand still burned beneath the glove, where the cub's teeth had broken skin. The bite pulsed with every heartbeat, but it didn't slow her down. She had done worse things for less important reasons. The others said nothing. They never did. Not to her. She had long since learned how to keep her space. The trail narrowed. Pines pressed closer together like they didn't trust humans either. Snow began to fall again. Soft, lazy, quiet as feathers. Private Leaks looked back at her once. Just once. Then he turned away. But Mara saw it. The way his shoulders tightened. The way he walked a little faster. He was rattled. Good. That meant he believed her. Or feared her. Either one worked. They reached the checkpoint where they had started. Rust. Silence. One broken tower leaning like a drunk. Sergeant Hall raised a fist. Circle up, he said. We rest here. Colds dropping fast. The squad moved like machines. Rifles checked. Radios adjusted. Eyes scanning. All routine. Mara didn't move. Her eyes stayed on Leaks. He sat on a crate, chewing jerky like nothing happened. But his knee bounced. Fast. She walked over. He didn't look up. You still thinking about reporting it? She asked, voice calm. Leaks froze, then slowly turned to face her. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know what you did was stupid, right? They'll burn you for it. Court-martial. Pack your bags, sweetheart. Mara leaned in, very close. Close enough for him to smell the blood on her glove. Close enough for him to see the stillness in her eyes. The cold. Not panic. not fear. Still, you do what you want, she said. But if you speak my name again, I'll make sure your teeth are the only thing they find of you in these woods. Leek stared at her. That smirk died. His mouth opened like he had something clever to say. But nothing came out. Mara blinked once, then turned and walked away. Later, when the squad settled in to rest, Mara moved quietly through the trees. No one noticed. They never did. She followed the trail back, past the twisted roots, past the hollow rocks. Her boots stepped into her own footprints from earlier, barely softened by fresh snow. The air felt different now, tighter. She slowed, then crouched. The cub was still there, curled beneath the roots, its body rising and falling with shallow breaths. The bandage had gone dark with blood. Its eyes opened when she arrived. No fear, just recognition. Mara reached out and touched its shoulder gently. Still fighting, she whispered. The cub didn't move, didn't growl. It blinked once, slow and heavy. Mara looked around. She felt them again. Not the cub, not the trees, the others, watching from deeper in the woods. She didn't see them, but she felt them. That weight in the air, that breath you didn't know you were holding. She leaned in close to the cub and rested her hand above its chest. You're not mine, she said. You don't belong to anyone. You were born wild. Stay that way. She stood, then paused, looked down one last time. If you live, she said softly, stay wild. Snow fell harder now. She turned and left the hollow, and the forest closed behind her. The squad was packing up when she returned. Sergeant Hall barked orders. Boots stomped. Radios buzzed. No one looked at her. She blended in, like a shadow among shadows. They moved out again, back through the woods, back toward base. As they marched, Mara brushed her fingers across her chest. The cloth bandage she'd torn from her shirt still sat inside her coat, soaked with wolf blood, pressed against her like a secret. Behind her, Leek stayed quiet. Behind her, the trees whispered, and far behind them, in a dark hollow beneath twisted roots, the cub lay curled and breathing. Alive, alone, but not forgotten, not by the woods, and not by her. That night, back at base, Mara cleaned her hand. The bite was deeper than she thought, ragged. She poured antiseptic into the wound without blinking. Blood ran down her wrist, thick, red, hot. She wrapped it herself, tight, precise. Then she sat on the edge of her cot and stared at the wall. The room was small, cold, bare. One cot, one locker, one lamp. No sound but her breathing. She didn't sleep. She rarely did. Instead, she thought about the cub, about the wire, about leaks, and about the eyes in the dark. 2 days passed. Nothing was said. No one knocked on her door. No one asked questions. Leeks kept his mouth shut. The forest kept its silence. But something had changed. She felt it every time she stepped outside. The air had teeth now. The wind moved like it remembered, like it was waiting. One afternoon, she passed Leeks outside the mess hall. He looked at her. She looked back. He didn't speak. She didn't smile. He turned away, and Mara kept walking. Behind her, the snow fell heavier than it had in weeks. Each flake landed like a whisper, and every whisper carried the same message. The forest remembers. The forest had gone quiet again, not just outside the base but inside her bones. Mara felt it every time she stepped out under the sky. A silence that didn't feel peaceful. A silence that listened. She kept her head down and her boots dry. That's how you stayed alive out here. You stayed sharp. You didn't ask questions. You didn't give anyone a reason to look your way. But even quiet soldiers get noticed eventually. And that day, her name showed up on the board. Sullivan, M. Solo Med Supply Run, North Point Forward Barracks, 0700 HRs. Her stomach dropped. North Point. She knew the route. Everyone did. 7 miles through tight forest trails, half-mapped, barely patrolled. The kind of trail where radios go quiet and footsteps get swallowed in snow. The kind of trail people don't come back from if the wrong eyes are watching. She walked straight to command and stood in the doorway like a ghost. Captain Dreyer looked up from a clipboard, pen tapping. "It's a straight run," he said before she even spoke. "Just a medical drop. You'll be back before sundown." "It's a two-man job," she said. Dreyer shrugged without looking up. "We're short on men. You'll be fine." Mara stood there, silent. "You're the most reliable one we've got," he added. "You don't talk. You don't panic. You finish your tasks." She nodded once, because there was nothing else to say, and because he was right. She didn't panic, not even when she should. The cold was sharp that morning, not gentle, not quiet. It bit through her jacket like needles, the kind of cold that didn't just sit on your skin. It sank in. She loaded the supplies into a sled behind her. Light cargo, bandages, vials, blood kits, nothing fancy, just enough to keep a few soldiers breathing. The trailhead opened like a mouth. She took one step in, then another, and the trees swallowed her whole. She had made it 1 mile when she noticed the first thing wrong. No tracks. Fresh snow, sure, but there should have been something. Rabbit trails, foxes, even elk herds sometimes passed through these woods. Nothing. The second mile was worse. No birds, no wind, just her own breath, dragging behind her like a second shadow. She adjusted the strap across her shoulder and moved faster. The sled rattled behind her, wheels barely biting into the frozen path. The silence pressed in closer. Mile 3. Something sharp hit her nose. Smoke. Old. Burned. Hidden under snow, maybe, or buried in bark. She stopped, scanned the trees. There, to her right, a black streak on a low branch, barely visible. She didn't step off the trail, didn't speak. She just kept walking. But now her fingers hovered closer to her sidearm. By mile 4, the wind changed. Soft flakes started to fall, barely enough to see, but they glowed strange in the light, like ash. The trees began to look wrong. Branches snapped low, like something tall had passed through. Some bent, some broken, all recent. She slowed, knelt, pressed her glove to the ground. Snow had been disturbed here, scraped and kicked aside, then quickly covered. Boot prints, maybe. She stood and looked around. She was being watched. She could feel it. Eyes behind trees, too far to see, too close to ignore. She reached for her radio. "Supply run en route," she said, voice low. "ETA to North Point, 70 minutes. No reply, only static. She kept walking. Mile 5. The trail forked. Left was deeper, colder, but faster. Right was wider, better visibility, but slower by half an hour. Command had told her to go left. She went right, because her bones said so. Because the back of her neck had started to itch. Because sometimes survival is just knowing when to stop trusting the map. The snow deepened. She adjusted her hood, tightened her gloves. Every few minutes, she looked behind her. She saw nothing, but the feeling stayed, like something was keeping pace, just out of view. Mile 6.5. The trees opened ahead into a small clearing with a manned checkpoint. She slowed. Relief crawled into her chest, but didn't settle. The flag looked right. The radio tower was up, and 9 men stood waiting. 9. Not 2. Not 4. 9. All in uniform, all smiling. But the patches were wrong. Too clean. Too new. One of them stepped forward and raised a hand. "You're just in time," he said. "They've been waiting for that gear." Mara didn't answer. She let her eyes move slowly across each face, each stance, each hand near a weapon. The man smiled wider. "You look cold," he said. "Come warm up by the fire. We've got coffee." There was no fire. There was no coffee. Mara's hand drifted near her belt. The radio was still dead. The sled creaked behind her, and the trees around the clearing stood too still. No wind, no birds, no life, just 9 men, and the faintest sound of breathing behind her. She didn't smile, didn't speak, just nodded once. The man stepped forward. She stepped back. Their eyes met. Then she saw it. One of the men had snow on only one boot. The other was clean. He hadn't walked here. He had been dropped. Or waiting. This wasn't a checkpoint. This was bait. The man moved again. Closer. Hand near his hip. She moved too. But not fast enough. Two more stepped out from behind the sled. Rifles in hand. Raised. Easy now, one of them said, smiling with teeth too white for war. Mara's fingers brushed the grip of her pistol. Then she heard it. A low whistle. Sharp. Practiced. Like a signal. All 9 men closed in. And the forest, once again, held its breath. Mara's boots sank half an inch deeper into the snow. Her eyes stayed on the man in front of her. He was still smiling. The others were spreading out, slow and smooth, like wolves circling a deer that didn't bolt yet. "Where's your escort?" the man asked. His voice was too light, too calm. Mara didn't answer. He didn't care. He took another step toward her. She took one back. Behind her, she felt the sled shift slightly. The weight of the supplies creaked in the ice. Her fingers inched closer to her belt. The man's hand flicked up. 2 rifles leveled at her chest. The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't," he said softly. Not a shout. Not a threat. Just a quiet order. Like they'd done this before. Mara didn't freeze. She didn't panic. She stayed still. But her heartbeat was hammering. These weren't soldiers. These were predators dressed in fabric that didn't belong to them. The patches were wrong. Some upside down. Some stitched crooked. Boots mismatched. Belts carried knives instead of radios. Too clean. Too careful. They didn't belong here. And they knew it. She spoke finally. "You're not with North Point." The man grinned. "Nah, we're not." Then his hand snapped forward. One of them grabbed her from behind. Rough fingers yanked her rifle from its sling. The strap burned across her chest as it was torn away. Another man stepped in, ripped the radio from her shoulder and smashed it into the tree beside her. Plastic cracked. Static screamed. Then silence. Her hand shot for her knife. They were faster. One grabbed her wrist, twisted hard. Pain lit up her arm. She slammed her boot down onto someone's foot. A sharp grunt. Then a fist cracked across her face. The world spun. Snow. Branches. Shadows. Voices laughing. She felt herself falling. Hands caught her. Not gently. Cold metal pressed to her back. "Get her off the path," someone said. Deeper. Somewhere quiet. The sled was forgotten. So was the gear. They dragged her into the trees. One on each arm. One behind her, pushing. Snow pulled at her boots. Branches scratched her face. Her breath came in short bursts. Pain flashed again in her ribs. Another hit. She stumbled. They dragged harder. Laughing now. One of them leaned in close. "You wandered too far, medic." She didn't answer. He smacked the side of her head. Hard. "Don't play silent. We know your type." They pulled her through thick brush and deeper snow until they reached a small clearing surrounded by pine. No one would hear her here. No one would find her. She saw that truth in their eyes. That comfort. They thought they had time. They thought she was helpless. They thought wrong. One of them pushed her down to her knees. "Let's see what she's hiding," someone said. Another reached for her coat. That was the moment. Mara moved. Her hand shot to her ankle. Steel flashed. She buried her backup knife into the thigh of the nearest man. He screamed. She twisted. Warm blood sprayed across the snow. She turned, slashing at the second man. Caught his cheek. He fell back. But then fists came at her from every side. One cracked into her temple. Her vision exploded white. Another punch drove into her ribs. She dropped. Boots hit her back. She hit the ground hard. Snow filled her mouth. She spat blood. Tried to rise. They grabbed her arms. Dragged her upright. Then slammed her against a tree. Hard. Bark scraped her spine. Hands clamped her wrists above her head. One man leaned close. His breath smelled like rot and smoke. "You're full of surprises," he said. Mara's lip bled. She smiled anyway. He frowned. Then hit her. Her head snapped sideways. Pain bloomed behind her eyes. But she didn't scream. Not once. Not for them. They pinned her tighter. Ropes now, pulled from a pack. Rough and fast. She was tied, trapped. A tree at her back. 8 pairs of boots in front of her. One limping in the snow behind them. They laughed again. One lit a cigarette. The smoke curled upward. Maybe we don't kill her yet, one of them said. Another nodded. Pretty little medic. The air turned colder. Sharp. Like teeth. And Mara felt it. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The laughter stopped. One of them turned his head. What was that? Was what? Thought I heard. A growl. Low. Slow. And not close. It rolled through the trees like thunder waiting to break. Mara didn't move. Didn't speak. She just smiled again. Bloody. Broken. But smiling. Because she remembered that sound. So did they. Another growl. Closer. Boots shifted. One man stepped back. The one she had stabbed was still on the ground, clutching his leg. He looked toward the trees, mouth open. The trees were quiet. Too quiet. Then came the first snap. A branch. Heavy. Far to the left. Then another. To the right. The men formed a circle. Weapons raised. Eyes wide. Animals, someone whispered. Wolves, another said. Shouldn't be this far in, a third muttered. Another growl. This one loud enough to vibrate the snow. And then silence. Perfect. Crushing. Every man turned slowly, searching the dark. Every shadow looked hungry. Then came the first scream. From behind them, the man on the ground, pulled into the dark. Gone. And the forest came alive. The scream didn't stop. It just faded into the trees. Dragged. Choked. Swallowed. The 8 men froze. Their boots shifted on snow, but none of them ran. Not yet. They still thought this was something they could fight. Shoot. Scare off. Then the second growl rolled through the woods. Came low, deep, so close it sounded like it was inside their bones. The kind of sound that didn't come from any single throat. Came from the earth. One man spun toward the sound. Nothing there. Another turned the other way. Still nothing. But Mara could see them. Even in the haze of pain. Even through the blood dripping from her mouth. She saw the eyes. Just one pair at first. A flash of yellow between the trees. Then 2 more. Then 5. Then 10. Eyes. Everywhere. Watching. Waiting. Mara tried to lift her head. Her body didn't listen. She was still tied to the tree. Her arms numb. Her vision swimming. But her ears worked. She could hear it all. The laughter was gone. Replaced by breathing. Fast. Shaky. Scared. One of the men raised his rifle. Back up, he said. His voice cracked. Back away slow. But they weren't backing away. The eyes were coming closer. No sound. No footsteps. Just movement. Shadow to shadow. Flickers of fur and fawn. Then the first wolf stepped out. It was massive. Gray-black coat. Muscles like coiled rope. His lips peeled back. Teeth gleamed wet and white. The man fired. A single shot cracked through the clearing. Snow jumped. The wolf didn't move. Another shot. Another miss. The wolf lunged. It hit the man like a hammer. Took him off his feet. Dragged him into the dark. Gone. Now the others opened fire. Wild. Erratic. Panicked. Muzzle flashes lit the trees. But there was nothing to hit. The wolves moved like smoke. One dropped from a low branch. Took a man down in a single snap. A scream, a crunch, and red sprayed across the snow. Another wolf lunged from behind a fallen log. Tore into a leg. Pulled. Ripped. The man fell, screaming, trying to crawl away. He didn't get far. Mara's head rolled to the side. She could barely see. But then something blocked her view. Something stood between her and the chaos. A wolf. Not as big as the others. But not small either. It didn't snarl. It didn't charge. It just stood there. Right in front of her. Still. Silent. Its head turned slightly. Its ears twitched. She looked at its side. There. On its haunch. A faint scar. Curved like a soft question mark. Her breath caught. The cub. The one she had saved. Alive. Grown. And here. stayed near her, shielding her body. Another bandit stumbled close. His rifle was empty, his eyes wide with horror. He saw Mara, lifted a knife. The scarred wolf moved, fast, precise, tore through him in seconds. A blur of teeth and blood. No hesitation, no mercy. Then it returned to her, panting, eyes bright. The air reeked of gunpowder, blood, fear. Mara's head lolled again. Her strength was slipping. Darkness at the edges now. The snow around her was red. Some of it hers, most of it not. The howling started. Not one voice, many, dozens. Chorus, low and long. The sound of something ancient, a sound older than war. The last thing Mara saw before her eyes shut was the scarred wolf circling her one more time. Then sitting beside her, watching, guarding, and the forest roared around them. Gunfire, screams, teeth, bones, then silence. Perfect, terrible, silence, and black. Silence is stretched through the trees like fog. Thick, heavy, final. Mara blinked. Once, twice. The world returned in pieces. Snowflakes drifted past her lashes. Soft, slow. Too soft for the ground she was staring at. Because the ground was wrong. It was red, not streaked, soaked. Patches of white still clung to places the blood hadn't touched. But most of it was gone, buried under smears of crimson, blackened mud, and broken prints. Her cheek pressed against cold bark. She was still tied to the tree. The rope bit her wrist, but the pain felt far away. Something warm moved beside her. She turned her head, barely, and saw them, the wolves, all of them, their coats streaked with blood and snow, their bodies silent shadows against the light. They stood among the bodies like ghosts, breathing, watching, done. The 9 men lay scattered, some in pieces, some untouched except for the way their throats had been opened like zippers. Rifles still clutched in frozen hands. Eyes still wide in terror. No one had screamed for a while now. Mara's breath caught in her throat. Not from fear, not anymore, but from awe. Because the wolves weren't feeding. They weren't sniffing. They weren't playing with the dead. They were still. A quiet army. And none of them touched her. Not one. They moved around her like she was already part of the snow. Already known. Already chosen. She tried to sit up. Pain lit her spine. Her ribs groaned. Her mouth tasted metal. But she forced her arms to move. The rope was loose now. Frayed. Torn. Something had chewed through it. She didn't ask what. She slid down to her knees. Hands sinking into the snow. Shaking. Then a sound pulled her gaze. Pause. Soft ones. The scarred wolf stepped forward. It limped. Just slightly. The same leg. The one she had wrapped. Weeks ago. In a moment no one else had seen. The scar was still there. Faint, but clear. The wolf looked at her. Then stepped closer. Its nose brushed her cheek. She flinched. Not from fear. From something deeper. The kind of tremble that comes when the world folds in on itself, and suddenly nothing makes sense but one tiny thread. A bond. Forged in pain. Held in silence. The wolf sniffed her coat. Paused. Then nudged the spot near her heart. Right where she had kept the bandage. The cloth stained with its blood. It remembered. She saw it in its eyes. And somehow she knew. So did all the others. The pack had not come for blood alone. They had come for her. Because she had once looked into the eyes of a helpless thing. And chosen mercy. And the forest had watched. It always watched. She reached out. Her fingers brushed the wolf's fur. Warm. Coarse. Real. The wolf didn't move. It let her. For a moment, everything around them vanished. The trees. The snow. The dead. It was just them. Then the wolf turned. One step. Then another. It limped back toward the line of trees. The others followed. No growls. No howls. No triumph. Just stillness. Then motion. Like mist rolling back into the shadows. One by one they disappeared. Until only paw prints remained. And Mara, kneeling, alone. The forest had taken what it came for. Justice. Vengeance. Balance. and left her breathing. She stared at the last gap between the trees, the place where the scarred one had vanished. Then she whispered, "Thank you." The wind shifted. Cold brushed her face, but something warm stayed in her chest. She stood slowly. Her legs shook. Her body screamed, but she stood. The bodies around her didn't move. 9 men, gone, forgotten by the world, marked by the wild. She walked past them, one step at a time, leaving no words behind, only blood, and prints, and the soft echo of teeth. The wind touched her face like a whisper, cold, empty, not cruel, not anymore. Mara stood at the edge of the clearing, her breath fogging the air, her boots sinking slightly in the blood-stained snow. The forest behind her was still. She turned and looked back one last time. No sound, no movement. The wolves were gone. Only the dead remained. 9 bodies, scattered, twisted, silent. She didn't count them again. She didn't need to. Her ribs ached with every breath. One eye was nearly swollen shut. Blood crusted across her jaw. Her coat hung in shreds. Her gloves were gone. And her hands, scraped raw from bark and rope, still trembled. But she was alive. She stepped toward the nearest body. It was the man who took her radio. His throat had been opened clean, like a quiet message from nature. She bent down and peeled off his jacket. Warm, dry, still zipped. She pulled it on slowly, flinching as the weight of it pressed against her bruises. It smelled like gunpowder and fear. She took his scarf too, wrapped it tight around her neck. Then she turned and started walking. One step, then another, each one a small scream inside her muscles. She didn't look back. The trees stretched for miles, thick, tall, indifferent. Her boots dragged through the snow, each one making a shallow trench behind her. Her fingers stayed clenched in the sleeves of the jacket, too numb to feel anything, too cold to let go. The sun barely broke through the clouds, just enough light to keep her from falling off the trail, just enough to remind her she wasn't dead. She walked for hours. Her stomach turned with every step. She hadn't eaten, didn't want to. There was blood in her mouth, not hers. She spit it out and kept going. Birds returned first. One small shape darted between trees ahead of her. Then another. She blinked. The silence was starting to break. The forest had spoken. Now it was done. Now it rested and let her go. The first sign of the barracks was the rusted signpost nailed to a pine. She saw it through squinted eyes. Her breath caught. She wasn't sure she'd actually make it back. She had walked so long. She had stopped keeping track of time. Snow fell again. Gentle this time. Like ash. Like memory. The path opened. Then came the fences. The floodlights. The dull hum of the outer sensor towers. She stepped into the open, a shadow limping through the white. 2 guards saw her and dropped their rifles in shock. "Medic!" one of them shouted. "Oh God! That's Sullivan!" Boots thundered. Voices echoed. Soldiers rushed her. She didn't speak. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't cry. She just walked straight through them. One soldier tried to touch her arm. She brushed him off without looking. Blood stained her pants, her boots, the jacket. Her hands were red to the wrist. But none of it was hers. She reached the front step of the medical building, dropped the supply bag at the door, then turned away, not a word, not a sound, and disappeared into her barracks. That night, the base whispered. Soldiers traded stories. What happened? Where did she go? Where are the others? No answers came. No search parties left. And Mara didn't leave her room. She sat on the floor beside her bed, jacket off, hands clean, hair damp from melted snow. The bandit's jacket lay in the middle of the room, still zipped, still stained. She stared at it for a long time, like it might move, like it might speak. Then she stood, opened the old metal heater, lit the flame. One piece at a time, she fed the jacket into the fire. It didn't scream, didn't resist. It just burned, slow and quiet, like a body sinking into a grave no one would ever visit. Later, she opened her footlocker, pulled out the old undershirt, the one she had torn weeks ago to wrap a wolf's leg. The fabric was stiff now, stained with dried blood, cracked at the seams. She pressed it against her chest, closed her eyes, and for a second, just a second, she felt warmth. Real warmth. Not from a flame, not from a coat, but from something deeper, something wild, something watching. She didn't cry. She just sat in the dark, waiting for morning, knowing the forest still remembered, and the wolves still knew her name. The first team found the clearing 2 days later. They were supposed to find a trail. What they found was a graveyard. 9 men, 9 corpses, spread wide across the snow, each one torn, each one broken, but none of it made sense. No bite marks where they should be, no flesh torn for feeding, no organs missing, no drag trails, just perfect violence. Fast, precise, clean, too clean. Their rifles lay beside them, unfired, or jammed. One had melted snow in the barrel. The medic pack Mara had dropped was still there, untouched, frozen in the same position where she had let it fall. One soldier turned and vomited in the trees. Another crossed himself and said nothing. They called it in, wrapped it in code. Animal engagement. Extreme. Likely wolf pack. Unknown pattern. Unmatched speed. But behind closed doors the base shook. Officers whispered. Old hunters raised their brows. Even the scouts, the ones who knew these woods, didn't believe it. Wolves didn't do that. Not like this. Not so fast. Not so organized. Not without touching the one girl in the middle of it all. Mara watched them from a distance. She didn't step near the search teams. She didn't offer her help. She didn't speak. Not once. Not to command. Not to the medics. Not to the scouts who asked quiet questions with their eyes. She stayed in her barracks, taped up her ribs, packed her gear. The transfer came faster than expected. A high-level medic unit. Handpicked. No reason listed. No debate allowed. Her orders came folded, stamped clean. She read them, nodded, started folding uniforms. She didn't leave behind a note, didn't visit anyone, didn't say goodbye. But the night before she left, she stood outside her room one last time. The trees were quiet. Snow fell steady and slow. The floodlights flickered gently on the edge of the fence. And then she saw it, far back, near the tree line, barely visible. 2 eyes, yellow, unblinking, watching, not hidden, not afraid, just there. Mara didn't move. She stood still, wrapped in her new coat, breath curling into the air like smoke. The eyes blinked once. Then another set appeared beside them, smaller, lower to the ground. Then another. She didn't count them. She didn't need to. The forest remembered. And now so did she. She nodded once. Soft, grateful. The eyes stayed a little longer, then faded. Gone again, like shadows in deep snow. Her ride came at dawn. A black transport truck. Unmarked. Quiet. She climbed in without a word. One duffel bag. Nothing else. As the base slipped behind her, Mara rested her head against the window. The world blurred. But in her chest, the bandage still lay folded. Old cloth. Dried blood. A knot she'd tied with cold fingers, weeks ago, in a forest that had no mercy. She kept it. She always would. Because some debts weren't paid with words. And some lives were only saved once. But that was enough. The wolves had not forgotten her. And she would never forget them. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. This is crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.